Morning everyone. Today we're doing 11.4b. Again, we're doing Pythagorean Theorem, but today we're going to take it a little bit farther. So we're going to start off with a little review. So we have a equals 10, c equals 21. So what we're going to have is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 10, so we'll have 10 squared plus b squared equals 21 squared. 10 squared is 100 plus b squared equals, now 21 times 21 is 441. So now we need to get b by itself, so what I'm going to do is subtract 100. So we get b squared is equal to 341. Finally, to get b by itself, we have to find the opposite of a square, which is a square root. So the square root of 341 is about 18.47. So if it's about, I'm not going to put an equal sign, I'm going to put an approximation sign. Alright, so now we're going to get a little bit tougher, and it's going to get a little bit longer too as well. So it says find the unknown lengths. We have 5x, x plus 2, and 5x minus 1. Now, the hypotenuse, or the longest side, is always going to be c. Let's say that this is a, and this is b. So now we're going to have a squared, which is x plus 2 squared, plus b squared, which is 5x minus 1 squared, equals c squared, which is 5x squared. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. X plus 2 squared is actually x plus 2 times x plus 2. So we're going to have to multiply those. I see two terms in each parenthesis, so what I'm going to do is draw a 2 by 2 box. We'll have x plus 2 and x plus 2. Now x times x, that's x squared. X times 2 is 2x. X times 2 is 2x, and then 2 times 2 is 4. So we'll have x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. The same thing for the second one. This time, though, we're going to have 5x minus 1. So 5x minus 1, 5x minus 1. 5x times 5x is 25x squared. 5x times negative 1 is negative 5x. 5x times negative 1, again, negative 5x. And negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. So now we'll have plus 25x squared minus 5x minus 5x plus 1 equals 5x squared. We'll have to square both of them. So 5 squared is 25. X squared is the next one. Alright, so we got something really long, but what I see is like terms. So I see that I have an x squared and an x squared here. So x squared plus 25 squared is 26x squared. Then I see that I have some x's, x and x here, 2x plus 2x, negative 5x plus negative 5x. So 2x plus 2x is 4x, minus 5x is negative 1x, minus another 5x is negative 6x. And finally, I see 4 and 1. 4 plus 1, that's 5, equals 25x squared. We need to subtract the 25 to get that by itself. So that cancels out. We get 0. 26x squared minus 25x squared is 1x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. Now, we're almost done. Now that I see I have a trinomial, what I have to do is factor that. So 1x or ax squared times c is going to be 5x squared. The b is negative 6x. So what is going to add to negative 6 but multiply to positive 5? Well, I know that it's going to be a negative 5x and a negative 1x. So finally then I can try to find the factors of that. So we get x squared, 5, negative 5x, and negative 1x. This will become x and x, negative 5 and negative 1. Negative 5 times negative 1 equals 5, so I know we're good there. So we get then x minus 5 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. Here we're going to add 5. X equals 5. Here we're going to add 1. X equals 1. Now one of those answers will be correct. So if we know that x could equal 5 or x could equal 1, we would have to put those numbers into our triangle and see which ones add up to equal the right thing. So what I'm going to do is, hopefully you have this written down. I'm going to erase some of it. I'm going to erase this top part here so we can figure out which x is correct. First I'm going to start with x equals 5. So that will be 5 times 5 plus or minus 1 plus 5 plus 2 equals 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25, minus 1 plus 5 plus 2 equals 25. 25 minus 1 gives me 24, plus 5 plus 2. 24 plus 5 is 29, plus 2 is 31. 31 does not equal 25, so I know that x equals 1 has to be my answer. Next one says a right triangle has one leg that is 2 inches longer than the other leg. The length of the hypotenuse is square root of 130 inches. Find the lengths of the leg. Okay, so I'm going to draw a triangle. One leg that is 2 inches longer than the other leg. Well, I know one leg has to be x. The other leg has to be 2 inches longer, so it would be x plus 2. The hypotenuse is the square root of 130. So what we would have would be x squared plus x plus 2 squared equals the square root of 130 squared. Now x squared, well, that's just x squared. X plus 2 squared, I have to make our box. So x plus 2, x plus 2. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. X times 2 is also 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. And the square root of 130 squared is just 130. So what we're going to have then is x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4 equals 130. Oh, I forgot the x squared from the front. So 2x squared, well, that gives me 2x squared. Then I have 2 x's, so that's going to be 4x plus 4 equals 130. So I'm going to try to find what x is, so I'm going to subtract 130 from both sides. We get 2x squared plus 4x minus 126 equals 0. What I see is I can factor out a 2 from everything. So I'm going to take 2 out, so I get x squared plus 2x. Now 126 divided by 2 going to give me a negative 63 equals 0. So then we just got to factor this out. We will have negative 63x squared and a positive 2x, which that tells me that negative 63, well, I can do positive 9x and negative 7x and get a positive 2x. So I'll draw my box there. We get x squared in the top box, negative 63 down here, 9x and negative 7x. We get x times x gives us x squared, x times 9 gives us 9x, x times negative 7. So what we get then is x plus 9 equals 0, and x minus 7 equals 0. If I subtract 9 here, I get x equals a negative 9. Here, if I add 7, I get x equals 7. Now, I'm looking for the distance of one of my sides, or the length of one of my sides, I should say. And I know I can't have a negative length, so I know that x must be 7. So x equals 7. Alright, we are going to skip this one for now. You guys feel free to do this one on your own if you want to. We're going to go to these ones. We're going to tell whether the triangle is a right triangle. Okay, so I see 8, 16, and 32. I know 32 has to be C because it's the biggest, and we'll say 8 and 16 are A and B. So we will have 8 squared plus 16 squared equals 32 squared. Now if 8 squared plus 16 squared equal 32 squared, then I have a right triangle. So let's figure this out. 8 times 8, that's 64. 16 squared gives me 256. And then 32 squared gives me 1024. 64 plus 256 gives me 320. 320 does not equal 1024, so this is not a right triangle. It's not a right triangle. Next one though, 12.5 is the biggest, so that's C. I'll say this is A and B again. So 7.5 squared plus 10 squared equals 12.5 squared. So this is where we should probably get a calculator. 7.5 squared is 56.25 plus 100. 12.5 squared gives me 156.25. 56.25 plus 100 gives me 156.25, which equals 156.25. Those do equal each other, so yes, this is a right triangle. Last problem. It says find the unknown sides e, x, and y. Write your answer in simplified radical form. So I'm looking for e, x, and y. Now e and x are on the same triangle, so that's two unknowns. I can't find anything with two unknowns. E and y are on the same triangle, so that, again, that's two unknowns. I can't do anything with that. So what I need to find first is y. I'm going to use 6 and 10 to find y. I'm going to say 6 is my a, so 6 squared, plus y squared, because we don't know what that is, but we do know what the hypotenuse is, and that's 10 squared. So 6 times 6 is 36, plus y squared equals 100. Subtract 36. And we get y squared equals 64. Find the square root of that. And we get y equals 8. So we know y equals 8. Now I know two sides of the middle triangle. I know a and b, 8 and 4. So I'll have 4 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. 4 squared is 16, plus 8 squared, which is 64, equals c squared. 16 plus 64, that's going to give me 80. 80 equals c squared. So I find the square root of both of those. Now this 80 is not a perfect square, and what they want me to do is find it in simplified radical form. So what I need to do is simplify the square root of 80. Now I know that 80 can be split up into 2 and 40. I know that 40 can be split up into 8 and 5, and 8 can be split up into 4 and 2, and then 4 can also be split up into 2 and 2. So I'm looking for pairs. I see a pair of 2's, so I have 2. I see another pair of 2's, so 2 times 2, and then the square root of 5 I can't do anything with, so that becomes the square root of 5. Two times 2 is 4, times the square root of 5 is going to equal c. So c is actually going to be e in this case. So 4 times the square root of 5 is e. Last thing then, I need to find what x is. So I'm using 4 times the square root of 5. So 4 times the square root of 5 squared plus x squared equals 12 squared. 4 times the square root of 5 squared, I'm going to have to distribute that 2 to all of it. So 4 squared is going to be 16 times the square root of 25 plus x squared equals 144. The square root of 25 is 5, so it will be 16 times 5. Which gives me 80. Plus x squared equals 144. So I'm going to do 80 plus x squared equals 144. Subtract 80. We get x squared equals 64. Square root of 64 gives me x equals 8. So in this case, two of my sides are the same. X and y are both 8. E